You're listening to Never Heard of It, a Night Shift Radio production. It's funny in watching a movie like this that was shot in my hometown, in our hometown,
Yeah.
and seeing all those places, and you're like, oh yeah. I probably also seen people do drugs at that spot. Oh yeah, I've probably seen people do drugs at that spot too.
I spent the entire movie playing the game of I know that place, and I think that was. We'll talk about the impressions of the movie itself, but I think that might have been my favorite part overall. It's just
seeing a movie and then seeing all those, but because it's aside from one, they're not really landmarks, per se. So it was just enough to see oh yeah, I know that street, I know that block, that kind of stuff.
I know those houses.
Yeah.
So,
so hello and welcome to the Never Heard of It podcast. I am Michael Fite,
and I am Caleb Big Time Coy. And we here at the Never Heard of It podcast have been practicing extreme social distancing for over a year now.
Yeah. Caleb is located in St. Louis, Missouri, and I am located all the way in Syracuse, New York. So we're doing our best to keep it up.
Not 6 feet, not even 6 states, several states between us. I actually don't remember the exact count. It might be 6. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana. Yeah, it's 6 states.
4, roughly. Yeah, it's 4. Yeah, cool. But yeah, so extreme social distance, and our audio engineer Kitsy is located all the way in Philly, right?
Yes.
I know they're in Pennsylvania, but yeah. So, wow. Extreme social distancing.
Extreme social distancing. We are a responsible organization at Night Shift Radio.
Now, then again, this podcast, we were recording this now on the 15th of March, and it is the 29th of March. So you could be like, dude, that was 2 weeks ago, man. This is all over by now. Or you could be like, it's the worst it's ever been. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks, so we'll see.
It could be a complete hellscape in 2 weeks from now, and we don't know.
We don't know.
Time will tell.
But in all fairness, every time we record a podcast, we think that, whether there's a disease or not, we don't know. It could be a hellscape in 2 weeks.
It's
you
true.
don't know what shit could go down.
And literally every 2 weeks from the time that we record, it's always worse.
Every single time, without fail.
Without fail.
One way or another. But so today we're talking about a movie called Big Time Adolescence, and I would say it's a special one for me, not as incredibly special as some of the others we might do in the future, but it's a special one for me because the studio that I work for, Syracuse Studios, actually, and one of the production companies I work for, American High, made this movie right here in our hometown.
That's very cool.
It is. It's awesome, I think.
I know that there has been a budding film industry in Syracuse for quite some time. I feel like this is one of the few movies filmed in the area that I have actually seen. I think there maybe were a couple, but I can't name off the top of my head. I know that there were more, but so I'm going to just go ahead and go out on a limb and say this is the first kind of quote big movie filmed in Syracuse that I've seen, and I was stoked.
Yeah, so there's a couple other movies. There's Slapshot, which only shot in Syracuse for a day, but it's set in Syracuse.
Because the hockey, yeah.
And then, the hockey, because they use the War Memorial. And then the only other one that's actually set in Syracuse, but they don't actually shoot in Syracuse, was the movie Snow Day with Chevy Chase.
Oh, weird. There was that one X-Files episode that I think was set in Rochester. I can't remember that. Or it might have been Syracuse.
They did actually shoot a scene in the Syracuse airport, and it's just Mulder on his phone, and like Scully calls him, and you just see Mulder, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm at the Syracuse International Airport right now," and then that's it. Like that's all you see, and they did actually shoot that in Syracuse, which is funny.
That's dedication. Go all the way to Hancock to shoot a scene.
just to shoot Mulder looking at his phone, going, "Yeah, Scully, go for Mulder."
So I remember we were fairly young in this podcast endeavor, and you messaged me one night and said, "Hey, we got this invite to a secret event over at the New American High production company, and it's right down the street from where I live. Like, do you want to go?" And I was like, "Yeah, fuck it, why not?" So in the middle of the night, we went and stood in line, which, mind you, is something I don't do. I don't stand in line for shit. But we stood in line to get into this secret event, and it was ended up being a stand-up show. And who was on that stand-up show?
Why, none other than Pete Davidson himself, the star of Big Time Adolescence.
What?
I tell ya. But so he did this surprise show, and so the backstory of this, the part that I learned afterwards, because I hadn't been working for film at that time, is he decided that morning that he was going to do the show. He literally was like, "Hey, I want to do a stand-up show." They're like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, you know, here in Syracuse. And they're like, "Great." And he's like, "Tonight." In like 5 hours in between hits of like pot. And they were like, okay. And so Syracuse Studios had roughly 4 or 5 hours to throw together this secret show. They did invites via, they basically posted a Instagram story and was like, "Respond to this Instagram. If we message you back, you and a friend get, tickets to the show." And so I did. Like I said, knew nobody on this production yet. I was not in film yet. I did respond, got in, called Caleb as he said, and off we went to stand in the fucking line outside for like an hour.
And like it was the craziest thing because there was this long line wrapping around like the parking lot of this old schoolhouse, and like we had no idea like what the fuck the event was for. Nobody did, and so there was all this conjecture of like who was going to be there and what it was about, and like all this like weird energy and like people actually talking to each other in public in upstate New York, like madness.
It was pretty crazy. And then so we get in. And, they get up and they make their announcement, and we find out that it was going to be a stand-up show. It was a pop-up stand-up show. So there was a couple of comedians. I don't remember the very first kid that went on, but it was like a young kid that went up before. And then the next up was the stand-up comic Joey Gay, who was also in the movie. And then Pete Davidson came on. And of course, everybody at the time, this is at the height of him dating Ariana Grande. So this was like, everybody knew Pete Davidson because he, was dating Ariana Grande, and, he's still on SNL. So like he was like known before this, but like the minute he started dating Ariana, I feel like he just blew up, and now he's like all over the news. It's crazy still. And they broke up like, during this film, actually like minutes after this film ended.
Which will find out why that's somewhat fitting. I don't think I even knew going into it that they were a couple because I don't really follow celebrity couples like at all, but I kind of knew of him from SNL. But like being honest, like sitting through that stand-up show like that night, I'm like, I don't think this guy's that funny. And flipped it around, a couple years later watching this movie, I'm like, holy shit, this is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, and the thing about Pete Davidson is, lately he's gone public about his drug issues, mental health issues, and stuff like that. And he absolutely plays himself in this movie, like 100%. Yeah. He's a stoner guy, is kind of shitty, and but learns a lesson, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, maybe, I mean, it seems like in real life he might be working on that. I don't know. I didn't get to meet him or work with him, so I don't know.
But yeah, it was at that show, like afterwards, that you actually got to meet a couple of people in the production company and write the next chapter of your own history.
I did, yeah. So I did something I never do, and I basically cold called in real life. I saw the owner, and it was Jeremy Garlick and Will Phelps, the two owners of Syracuse Studios and the American Night Production Company. And I saw them, and I had recognized Jeremy. Jeremy Garlick, of course, is the writer and director of the film The Breakup with Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston. He also did The Wedding Ringer and he did a film with like Kevin Hart. Like, he's been around, done a lot of movies. And I recognized them, and I was like, hey guys, my name is Michael. This is Caleb. We have a podcast about movies. We would love to cover movies that you guys are doing. And they were like, yeah. And I emailed them maybe like a week later, and I was like, hey, like blah, 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 this is my history. And like, I would love, we would love to work with you for the podcast stuff. And I was like, what, if you ever need any help on films, let me know. And it was about a month later, I got an email, and they were like, hey, we're making another movie. Do you want to come be a part of it? I was like, fuck yeah, dude. And then that was it. And then I made 4 movies with them, and now I run their studio for them.
That's so fucking cool.
It was a year and a half ago, and then all of a sudden we went from standing in line to now I literally run their studio. Yeah.
And like here we are now finally reviewing the first movie, and it feels right.
It does. So Big Time Adolescence follows the story of Monroe, a young kid who average kid, but his older sister, Holly, is dating this guy by the name of Zeke, who's played by Pete Davidson. And so they date for a while, and Monroe's a young kid at the time. I think he's like 8 or 9. And, of course, Monroe and Zeke, bond because he sees him as like this cool older guy figure. And, Zeke, treats him like he's normal, doesn't treat him like a little kid. So like he looks up to him and he just thinks he's the coolest thing. And then years later, of course, Holly and Zeke break up, but Monroe and Zeke stay friends.
Yeah, so we get to
end. No.
The end. That's it. Nothing else happens. We get, of course, an introductory scene where Monroe is sitting in class. He's called out by the principal and like being escorted out of the school by a cop. And you're like, what the fuck is happening? And then all of a sudden it's 6 years earlier. So we get to see this introduction of Zeke and Monroe's friendship and how like after Monroe's sister breaks up with Zeke, how like he's like, I don't want to like not hang out with you. Like you're the coolest person I know. And Zeke's like, get the fuck in the car. We can hang out for like an hour. And then they end up like sitting around in the fucking Northern Lights parking lot for the rest of the night with his buddies drinking and smoking and whatnot. And yes, I did recognize that media play in the background.
Yeah. We have a rundown media play. It used to be media play, if anyone remembers media play, but it's still there and it's still empty. Fucking 10 years later, media play. When did media play shut down? 15 years ago.
I mean, is the Christmas tree shops even still open? Because that was the last like big thing in that plaza.
So if you're looking at the media play, the Christmas tree shop's to the right.
Yeah.
And then that's it. There used to be like a Payless, I think, to the left. But
you can see it. Down. You can see the Payless in the movie. Yep. There was a pizza place. I think it was Palladino's. They're still there. They are? Okay.
Yep, they're still there because it's Sally Beauty Supply, Palladino's, and Party City. Those are like the only 3 things left.
Party City's still open? That's actually
Party City's still open.
The first thing that we saw in the background, I was like, shit, that's Northern Lights. I know that parking lot. And then, of course,
where that is.
It will come into play later, but the old Hoffman House, which is now like Salt City Dogs or something like that.
Yep.
Like it's just a smaller building in the like the edge of the parking lot. So just right there, just like big time adolescence. No, big time nostalgia, motherfuckers.
Right. Big time for anyone that grew up in Syracuse. You could be like, oh, I miss Media Play.
Yeah, it still looks exactly like that. It's sad. Media Play was dope though.
Dude, I fucking loved Media Play. That's where I got like my anime DVDs from. Like they had the coolest shit, like great albums. Like you could find the coolest, most indie records there.
And the one in Shopping Town that had the second story, but downstairs.
Yeah.
It was like just this cool layout.
Oh, it was just so cool. Yeah, Media Play, for those of you on the West Coast, you might remember Sam Goody.
Yeah.
Sam Goody and Media Play were the same store.
Oh,
they were just
I didn't know
Media
that.
Plays. Yeah, there were Media Plays on the East Coast and Sam Goody's on the West Coast. I think that's how it worked out. They were basically the same store.
Okay.
I think. I'm almost positive.
I remember traveling and seeing Sam Goody or like hearing about it, reading about it, thinking like, why don't we have Sam Goody? And now I think, well, they didn't have Media Play, so fuck them.
Bunch of dicks. And now we're like, literally, there are no more stores to buy records anymore. Like,
No.
unless it's like a locally owned, there are no more records. They're like music stores.
Speaking of which, so at the end of this movie, during the end credits, there's a special thanks to, and they list out a bunch of the locations where they filmed, which gave some validation to the places that I knew that I recognized. But there was one very glaringly obvious omission from that list of thanks. Did you notice that they don't mention the Soundgarden at all?
They don't mention Soundgarden, yep, and they filmed right in Soundgarden.
There's a whole scene where they're shopping for records, and it is very obviously the Soundgarden in right in Armory Square, like right next to my old condo. And
Yeah.
the only thing that was missing was Mike Watson.
Aw. But they did have a very fun replacement guy that kind of looked like him. Like if Mike Watson gained a few pounds.
It's
Like a lot of pounds because he's really skinny.
It's like, yeah. It's like they specifically tried to cast a Mike Watson-esque character just to stand there and be Mike.
And I know for you guys listening at home, nobody really knows who Mike Watson is unless you grew up in Syracuse. But Mike Watson looks like the lead singer of A Flock of Seagulls, but like if he became cool and not like new wave, like if he became punk rock instead of new wave, or if like Flock of Seagulls went like cool emo instead of like, you know, like mainstream emo. That's what he looks like. But anyways,
the point is,
hi, Mike Watson.
Soundgarden is a dope little record store, and shout out to them. If you're in the Syracuse area and you want to be able to buy physical media, go check them out.
Heck yeah, great selection of vinyl. Like probably the largest selection of vinyl I've seen in pretty much all of upstate New York. It's awesome. Aside from like a record fair. But anyway, so Monroe, so we see this scene where Monroe is like, you know, they're in the parking lot drinking and smoking, you know, and stuff like that. And you see Monroe kind of growing up in this environment. So we get the idea that like they've been friends for years now. So now he's 16. He's in school, you know, he's hanging out. We see that he is, he's kind of a loner. Like he, you know, because he's been so much with these older, you know, friends, he kind of has a hard time relating to high school kids. And it puts him in this really awkward spot because like, there's a lot of things he can't relate to his older friends, you know, like Zeke and his friends. But then at the same time, he doesn't really relate to his high school friends. So Monroe really kind of sticks out. So this is why I think he's drawn to Zeke so much.
Yeah. And like, see, they basically like dare him to have his first like real, I say real drink, but not real drink. It's, they're playing, was it quarters, right? And there's what they call the home run. That's just a mix of just a bunch of shit that would like, it actually made me nauseated just to hear him list out the various ingredients, and Monroe just takes it and chugs it. And of course the next morning feels like absolute garbage and is puking in the bathroom stall. And we get introduced to his friend Stacy, who is the like kind of wannabe cool kid in the high school. Cause they're probably like freshmen.
So they're 16. So they're like 10th, 11th grade. Yeah.
So somewhere in there. And like, you know, Stacy's really trying to like impress the seniors and like get into their parties and like really badly wants to be that guy that fits in. And like he hears Monroe puking in the stall. And he's like, dude, are you dying? And he's like, no, I'm just a little hungover. That's so badass.
He's like, it's Thursday. It's so badass. So Stacy is played by Thomas Barbuska, who has been in a few things. He was in the show The Mick, which was the what's her name from I Think It's Always Sunny, Caitlin Olsen.
Oh yeah.
He was in the show Middle School. He was in the show One Day at a Time. He was in the AMC show Preacher. So he's in Arrested Development. But he's been in a bunch of stuff throughout his young life. Oh yeah, he was in The League.
I think one of the most interesting things about the casting in this movie is they don't ever at any point explicitly say that this is in Syracuse, although like it very obviously is based on the landmarks. But every single person who is cast in this movie very much looks like they belong in Syracuse.
We do see a sign that says something Syracuse when they go to a bar. It says that they but
go to fucking
Syracuse.
Shifty's, and there's a big like SU sports neon sign with the dome and everything. Like I'd see them walk up to that. I was like, "What bar is this? I have drank there."
I have celebrated been to this bar.
We celebrated my 30th birthday / like leaving Syracuse party there like the day before I moved to St. Louis the first time.
That's super funny. It's really funny. I celebrated my 30th birthday at Empire Brewing Company, another Syracuse bar landmark, which is pretty funny.
So, it's just like everyone, like it was very believably cast. Even like,
yeah.
I know he talked a lot of shit on it, but like Pete Davidson very much belonged in this movie.
Yeah. So and by the way, Monroe was played by Griffin Gluck. Griffin Gluck has been in a bunch of stuff. He's currently in Lock and Key on Netflix, which is awesome. By the way, if you haven't watched it,
he was in Silicon Valley.
Yep. American Vandal. He was in that for a while, which also stars Tyler Alvarez, who the very first film I did with American High, Tyler Alvarez was in.
Look at that.
I know. So fun.
You're getting your connections already. Like you're starting.
Oh yeah, it's there. But yeah, so there's that. And then one more fun fact, and then we're going to take a quick break. So Stacy, Mo's friend, mentions that there's this huge party at this guy Paul's house. And the fun fact about that is that the facilities manager for Syracuse Studios, his name is Paul Stacy. And Paul Stacy, his name makes it into every single American High film. So one of them coming up, they go to the gymnasium and it's the Paul Stacy Gymnasium.
Yep.
There's another one where one of the characters' name is Paul Stacy. So in every film that American High has done, Paul Stacy's name has made it into the film in one way or another.
That is awesome.
So that's a fun little nod, and that's a fun little behind-the-scenes thing. So let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll dive into the actual story of Big Time Adolescence.
Hey everyone, I'm Kitsy.
And I'm Caleb, and this is Left of the Dial, a music podcast.
Every week, we each dig into our collections for a record we love, or a new record we're excited about, and talk about it.
We'll share clips of songs that stand out to us, and discuss why we chose each one, what we love about it, what we don't, and why the record was important to us.
Hopefully, we'll find some new music to love with every episode, and maybe you will too.
So join us every Friday for new episodes at leftofthedial.fm,
or wherever podcasts are sold.
Hey, so I don't know if you noticed, but it looks like we've got another Anchor ad.
Oh.
So I guess we should talk about that. And I think we probably can't talk about Anchor without throwing out there right off the bat, like, it's free.
Free?
Can you believe it? It's free.
Wow. And I hear that there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer.
And if you're lazy like us, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and I think some more too. I think many more.
That's fantastic because it's so much work going to all of those platforms.
It's so much.
And you could make money from your podcast with no minimum amount of people. So if you only have one friend that listens, you can still make some cash.
Like us.
Yeah.
And, it really is everything you need to make a podcast. Just in one place, one-stop shop.
Wow, one place. Well, you should go ahead and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
Like right now. But, I mean, after the episode.
Hello and welcome back. Big time adolescence. We mentioned Mo's hanging out with Zeke, and what we've learned about Zeke is that at the very beginning of the movie, we learned that he is accused of cheating on Holly. To which they have this big fight. This is when they break up. Mo is still very young at the time. He's like 9 or 10. And, Holly's like, you cheated on me, like you fucked her. And he's like, no, I just liked one of her pictures.
It's Kate. Holly is his girlfriend in the present.
Oh, in the present. That's right. I'm sorry. Kate. Yep. So, so Kate's like, you fucked her. And he's like, no, she lost a lot of weight and now she looks really good. And I was like, oh, damn. So I liked her photo. Very Pete Davidson response.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I didn't sleep with her. And, so they break up. And then, Mo comes out after hearing it and he was like, let's hang out. And he was like, fuck it. So now that we get them together and we mentioned the thing where he's drunk. So, Mo goes back and he tells Zeke about the invitation to this party. And he's like, yeah, Paul has this party and it's the Pimps and Hoes party and it's at his friend. And Zeke's like, dude, I invented that party. Like that was from me. I was the one who started all those parties because he went to the same high school as Mo. So he was like, probably one of the lines you hear in the trailer is he says like, you should go to that party and sell pot. And he was like, what am I just going to show up at a party and everyone's going to want to buy pot from me? Like, call me crazy. Which is such a great line. It was actually, and I've seen that line so many times because it's in the trailer. It's, it's a lot of the like footage we'd send off to people to like buy this film. But it's just such a funny line. Like his delivery it's just perfect. His face, like it's just face where he's just like, call me crazy. Absolutely brilliant.
And so, of course, that kind of starts Monroe down this path of being the guy with the hookup. Stacy gives him cash to buy alcohol for the party, which then Monroe and Zeke go out and mostly like spend that cash on records, hence the scene at the Soundgarden. And Zeke gives him a bunch of like watered down bottles of vodka and stuff. And he's like, easy there. Like they're going to notice if they're drinking straight Evian. He's like, nah, nobody wants to be the one that like doesn't feel it.
Right. It's so funny because he calls out so much high school shit. He was like, high school kids don't know how much drugs cost. He's like, they don't care. He's like, you just tell them whatever, they'll pay it. He's like, especially rich white ones.
Yeah. They don't care how much it costs. It's not their money. They just want to get high.
Yeah, right.
Like, that's
just
so
like,
fucking true.
Like, oh man. All of a sudden I was 16 again, going like, well, I mean, yeah. I didn't care what kind of alcohol it was, as long as it was alcohol, I guess. I didn't give a fuck. It's like, what, straight gin? Oh, it's 40 years old? Fuck it.
Ooh, aged
yeah,
gin.
Gin was the very first thing I ever got drunk off of, and it was terrible. It tasted like drinking like watered down pine tree.
But did you drank it straight?
Mm-hmm.
That's brave.
Well, I didn't know. I was fucking 16, man. And nobody told me.
I started with gin for two reasons. One, because of the Gin Blossoms, and two, because of 1984. It drinks nothing but like shitty, basically like bathtub gin in this, anti-utopian hellscape of the time in the novel. And I'm like, man, gin sounds like a badass drink. Like that's what I'm going to start. But I did a gin and tonic. Like I'm sophisticated, motherfucker.
Well, you did it right. Not me. Where I was like, we didn't have a cork like bottle opener, so all the cork got in it too. So we were like spitting out cork as we drink. Fun
fact: at Shifty's, my very first drink. True story.
Hey, look at that. So when they go to this, so Mo and Zeke, they go to this bar. And, Mo, of course, Zeke like orders a beer, has a sip, slides it over to Zeke really quick, or to Mo really quick, who throws a straw in it, drinks it really quick, and then slides it back, puts a straw back in his Coke and drink. There's a really funny line in that one too, when they were like yelling over to, like, some girls were like being hit on by one of his friends, who, by the way, is played by Machine Gun Kelly.
Oh yeah,
Nick. Yeah, it was played by the rapper Machine Gun Kelly, who's an insane person, by the way. I mean, they all are. They're all crazy. But anyways, she yells over, like, isn't he a little young to be in here? He's like, aren't you a little old to be in here? It's just great. A very funny retort. So Mo at this point, so we see that Mo is just enamored with Zeke. Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, so Mo is just like enamored with Zeke. Like he's just like literally follows him around like he just thinks he's the coolest thing ever. His parents are like his dad, played by John Cryer.
Amazing. Yeah. Absolutely amazing.
So John Cryer, if you're unfamiliar, most notably was Ducky in Pretty in Pink. And, of course, is now most recently, you also saw him, he was also on 2.5 Men, if you watched that show. But most recently, he plays Lex Luthor in the Arrowverse CW shows.
He's the one you think is Matthew Broderick, but it's not.
But it's not, is the other one. But yeah, so John Cryer plays his dad, and of course his dad and mom are like, you sure you want to be going out with Zeke still? Like, his dad's desperately trying to bond with him, like he's got baseball, and like Mo's terrible at baseball. And he's like, hey, we could go hit a couple right now. Like, we can go play catch in the yard. Like, do you want me to take you to the batting cages? And he's like, no, it's fine. I'm going to go hang out with Zeke, and I don't really want to be on the team. And then he ends up going off and doing all those things with Zeke. So like, you see the dad is like losing on his bonding with his son.
I mean, can we talk for a second? Like, if I had been like, no, I'm going to go spend like all of my time hanging out with this dude who's like 6 years older than me all the time. And like, whenever my parents tell me that, they don't want me to, I'm just going to be like, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. That would not have flown in my house. But I guess if you live on a fucking James Street mansion, that right. You get away with that shit. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that would have flown too. If I was like 16 and been like, yeah, I'm going to go hang out with this dude, he's like 23, my mom would have been like, no, the fuck you are not. You can sit your ass down.
Oh, I'm picturing it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how it would have gone down.
Yeah, that's very... My mom, of course, just would have walked outside and beat the fuck out of the guy. And they're like, get the fuck... Yeah, she would have pounded the piss out of him. That kid, he wouldn't have been able to walk. You leave my son alone. And then like stolen his beer and thrown a party. That's the big drama of the situation of the house. And of course, we have the awkwardness of Mo's older sister being Zeke's ex-girlfriend, who she now has a boyfriend. They live together, and they live in a very nice apartment. I
know exactly where that building is.
Yeah. That's when I saw those apartments. I know where those apartments are. Yeah, it was pretty fun.
It's right over by Middle Ages, so super close to where I used to live.
Yeah, at first I thought it was where you lived last. I was like, oh, isn't that because it looks the same on the inside?
Almost.
Yeah,
almost.
And then so we get a lot of those awkward scenarios where Mo is really trying to keep a foot on each side. Like he's trying to live on each side of the riverbed, and it ain't working out for him. So he finally gets to his very first party. He shows up. He's got a thing of alcohol. He's got the weed, and this is it. Now he's a huge hit. Everyone's like, "Holy shit! Like you're the dude. You've got weed. You've got tons of alcohol. Like this is awesome." And he gets his opportunity to talk to the girl he likes, Sophie. And it doesn't go well at first, but Zeke gives him this terrible advice.
Yeah,
where he's like, talk to her nonstop until like she gets super into you, and then just ghost her for a couple weeks, and then like come back in and like get with her. And even his current girlfriend Holly was like, well, ugly people don't need, or attractive people don't need to do that kind of shit. You're ugly. That's why you have to do that.
Yeah, because she like you could tell that like she likes Mo. She thinks it's fun having her around, but like she also like genuinely appreciates like that kind of like youthful innocence of his, and like it's just a little flirty with him and whatnot. But like she's like, nah, yeah, Mo's good. Like don't listen to Zeke's advice. Like maybe actually just be you. And of course, Mo doesn't do that. He follows Zeke's advice, right. And it very much backfires on him, as you would expect.
Yeah, so throughout the film, we just get tons of instances of Sophie just being like, what the fuck? Like they end up like he calls her. Zeke was like, call her on the phone. Don't text her, just call her, talk. And so he calls her, and she's like, this is the very like one of the first times they ever start talking. She was like, why are you calling me? He was like, just to say hi. And she was like, just to say hi? Why would you do that? She was like, what the fuck do you want? Like, it was really funny. And she just, she's kind of like, just goading him on a little bit, like, being funny, because eventually she was like, no, yeah, it'd be cool if we talked later. Like, text me like a normal person, though.
Yeah.
And I think that's really funny. But it's a very funny thing, because he was like, I don't know. So she was like, text me. There'll be less awkward silences.
Yeah. What are you doing? You literally just asked me that.
So as the movie progresses, the biggest thing we get Mo constantly being in situations where he keeps falling into following Zeke's bad advice. Mind you, everybody in this movie is telling Mo about how terrible of an influence Zeke is on them. Like Zeke's friends, like Holly was like, don't do this. Kate is like, yeah, Zeke's like really great and he's fun and, and he pays attention to you and he's cool. She's like, but it doesn't last. Like you realize after a while that that's all he has to offer, that he's a nobody. And so we're going to talk about the last scene of the movie, which I think is probably one of my favorite visual scenes I've probably top 10 I've ever seen in a movie, because of what happens in the very, very last scene. But yeah, so Mo is kind of just keeping like, screw you, like Zeke's fun, he's my friend, he's looking out for me, we're best friends, but then he just keeps falling into shit, I guess.
Yeah, well, and he even like tries to protest a few times, because like the first party goes off fine, and like everyone's like, yeah, Mo's crucial, we need Mo, and so like they keep inviting him back, and they want more and more from him. They want different kinds of drugs, they want more alcohol and things like that. And he's like, I don't want to be the guy who like shows up with the bag at the party. Like I don't want to be like a teenage drug dealer. And Zeke just keeps talking him into doing it, and so does Stacy, because Stacy again still like wants so desperately to be that popular kid that like Mo is just kind of like giving into that pressure from both sides, even though he doesn't want to. And yeah, like so many people are trying to give him that advice, and he's trying to follow it, and he just defaults to basically what would Zeke do. And so like you see like the theme of this movie starts to develop, where like he is seeing himself like what he's going to become if he continues down this path. Like he looks at Zeke and realizes like, shit, this is me 6 years from now if I keep doing this.
Yeah. And it becomes, and he really, really doesn't learn his lesson. And the unfortunate part is, for the plot of the movie, he doesn't actually learn his lesson until the really end, where a really big, crazy thing happens. And then that's it. Like, that's how he learns his lesson. It's not, he, like his dad keeps, saying all the things like, hey, why are you so bad at baseball? He's like, you never practice and blah, blah, blah. And, there's just so many instances, like little things that happen. He doesn't take the hint, and it takes the big incident at the end of the movie for him to be like, oh shit, like this is it. Yeah. So the biggest parts of this movie, we've mentioned a few times, is that there's just these tiny little scenarios that Mo gets into that he should make the 16-year-old choice, but instead he ends up making the 23-year-old stoner loser Zeke choice. Mm-hmm. And you were mentioning about how, the party keeps progressing, and he's like, I don't want to be the teenage drug dealer, to where Zeke makes all. He's like, no, you're just the kid that always brings alcohol and drugs and just sends it to and sells it to his friends. And he's like, yeah,
that's
it's the drug dealer.
That's exactly it.
So we finally get to date with Sophie, and they end up going out for sushi. And then afterwards, they end up going over to Zeke's house, which they play a game where they duct tape 2 bottles of alcohol to their hands.
Edward
and
40
whoever
hands.
finishes, they're 40 hands. I've never played. I was a nerd.
I've never played either because I'm not about to try to drink 80 ounces of malt liquor without the opportunity to go to the I'm not going to try to drink 240s to begin with, but much less without the chance to go to the bathroom in between. Fuck that.
Right. And it's at this point, Machine Gun Kelly, his Zeke's friend Nick, makes the very very funny. He's like, I don't know about this girl, man. He's talking to Mo, and he's like, you're a really good dude, but like, she's 16, bro. Like, what are you doing? And he was like, I'm 16 too. And he was like, yeah, I'm just. Wait, what? And like, he just has this like epiphany of like, oh fuck! Like he's like, this dude's 16. I've been hanging out with this dude for the better part of a decade, and I just found out he's 16.
It's great because like you start to see the people around Zeke starting to grow up and like figure out their lives, because you mentioned like Kate, she's moved in with her new boyfriend, and they've got this really nice apartment, and they're trying to be adults, even though like she still goes back and fucks Zeke a couple times for old time's sake. But like Nick has this moment where he's sitting on the ground like realizing like, shit, like I'm almost 30 and like, what the fuck am I doing? And like, we see him kind of distance a little bit. Zeke, of course, never learns his lesson and is up to his old games, fucking around with other girls while he's dating this girl Holly that we talked about, and she finds out and she breaks up with him, and she's like, whereas like she is the one that's acting like an adult, like she's cooking and she's like seems like a fairly like reasonably stable and mature person at this point in their late 20s, and like everyone is starting to move on and leave Zeke, and it's just like Mo and Zeke clinging together in this weird like can't let go of the dream sort of way.
Yeah. So one of the funny scenes is Kate sends Zeke a shopping list to go out and buy a bunch of ingredients, and they go to the store, and he was like, pea shoots? What the fuck are pea shoots? He's like, where are the pea shoots? He goes, sir, do you have any pea shoots?
They got a fucking Domino's, which is like a corner store.
It's like an Italian store. Just fucking brilliant. It's just a really, really funny
Ask
shop.
for pea shoots and then fish sauce, and like, they don't have any of that, of course. And so like the next scene is like Holly cooking for them, and like she makes this whole meal, and I was like, this is really good, and she's like, yeah, it would have been even better if you got any of the ingredients I asked for. And Zeke's like, well, all the ingredients you asked for are stupid. Just go to a real grocery store, Zeke. Go to Wegmans. There, I said it.
Wegmans, it's happened. This is not the first time on the podcast, but we love Wegmans. So we learn, so all this happens. So now during the Edward 40 Hands game, Kate picks up, gets a message, a phone goes off, and she's like, oh, Mo, it's your phone. He's like, oh, that's not mine, it's Zeke's. And she looks at the phone. She sees that Zeke is, fucking around with some other girl. So she dumps him, she leaves, and, Mo has his moment with Sophie, where he makes out and he comes back. And this is another example of you see the gap in age is, Mo comes back and he's like, oh my God, that was awesome, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, did you fuck her? And he's like, no, like I was only gone 3 minutes. And he was like, so? And he's like, no, like we kissed and there was a little bit of tongue and blah, blah. And he's like, all right, tongue daddy. Now, mind you, at the moment, Nick, Machine Gun Kelly, is giving Zeke a tattoo. And Zeke was like, I think it's fucking time. I think it's time.
So like, it's worth calling out that like Nick is giving this tattoo, and he's like, wait, so how do you spell Zeke again? I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Which is great.
So just getting this random ass shit tattooed on himself. Like, what's the one that Kate notices when they get back together and like hook up in the car?
The shark.
Yeah.
She was like,
Jaws.
oh, you got a shark? He's like, I just saw
Jaws.
He's like, yeah, it's a fucking dope movie. Have you seen it? She's like, what?
So yeah, they get Mo to submit to Nick tattooing the words "tongue daddy" on his chest.
Yes. And of course, this is one of the big moments. So he was like, yeah. So his dad finds it the next day, and so he's got tongue daddy on him, and he's like, what the fuck is this? So his dad is flipping out. They ground him. He's not allowed to go out, and he was like, I don't want you seeing Zeke anymore. Like, this is fucked up, and of course, so Mo is talking on the phone with Zeke, and he was like, just fucking sneak out. Like, I quit my job. Like, Zeke quits his job because they're making so much money selling all this drugs and alcohol, at a profit to all of his friends for these parties, that he was like, I'm just going to quit my job because they're splitting it half. And so he gets all pissed, and he was like, no, Mo, like, you got to sneak out. You're like a foot tall. Just go through the doggy. So...
Forget about all the one-liners.
Just there's so many good little cool so this movie is streaming on Hulu. It was purchased by Hulu as part of a big deal that Syracuse Studios and American High got. Highly recommend. This is a of course watch. But yeah, so Zeke finally sneaks out, and this is starting to be the culmination of our film. This is the big part. So one thing that happens, there's a whole bunch that happens kind of right at one shot. So Stacy is driving with a bunch of the senior kids in his car. They're all getting high, and they're on their way to the party. Stacy, he swerves his car a little bit and ends up going off the road. Everybody bails, and he was like, fuck. So he bails. He goes to school. Cops pick up his car. They call him in during the day at school, and they're like, how'd you get this? He's like, it's just so funny.
I rode my bike. Where's your car? At home? No, it's not.
No,
I have it.
He's like, what? I am so mad right now.
That's my mother's car, so she probably would want to know about that.
And so they basically tell him, like, look, we'll let you off if you tell us who the person is that's supplying all this drugs and alcohol. Like, we know about these parties. You tell us who it is. And of course, Stacy is like, so we get the impression, we don't see him say it, but we get the impression that he blows Mo in. So at this time also, Mo has snuck out, and he ends up hooking up with Holly. So Holly calls him over, Zeke's ex-girlfriend, and she just, lays it on thick, and he lays it on thick for her. Oh. I didn't feel good about that.
You should not.
So, they hook up. He leaves. It becomes this big thing, and he ends up hanging out with Zeke the next day. He doesn't tell Zeke. And so Zeke and him are hanging out, and this other dude comes up by the name of Ricky, and Ricky is played by the comedian Joey Gay. And the story about this is in real life, while filming, Pete Davidson and Joey Gay were driving around Syracuse, and they got pulled over. I believe Pete was driving, and Joey Gay was in the passenger seat, and Joey ended up getting arrested for possession of marijuana at this time, and that was one of the reasons why Pete got super pissed. Besides the fact that they got pulled over a lot while driving around Syracuse, it was awkward, but yeah, it happened a lot. Also, another fun fact about this movie is that in the middle of the movie, Pete Davidson and Machine Gun Kelly just kind of disappeared for about an entire day because they went off and shot a music video for Machine Gun Kelly all over Syracuse with one of the cars, which is pretty funny. And you could see that video online.
Also important to mention that Joey Gay is in several episodes of Law & Order SVU, and Law & Order Criminal Intent.
And there's our connection again, ladies and gentlemen. Always a connection. So that happens. So he ends up telling Zeke that that he slept with Holly, and Zeke has a moment. He gets like upset, but it isn't the moment that I thought was going to happen, because typically this is the moment where you have that big conflict where they like get into a fight and they split, and then they eventually get back together. And I thought, the later in the moment, but he doesn't. He's just like, it's okay, dude. Like, he kind of like, I feel like there's this moment where Zeke was like, fuck, like that's something I totally would have done. Like, what am I doing to this kid? Because at this point, John Cryer's already like confronted Zeke and been like, he gives Zeke money And he was like, "Hey, thanks for, watching my kid." And he was like, "Oh no, like you don't need to pay me." And he was like, No, I do, because this is your job." He's like, "So if Mo ends up getting drunk, flunking out of school, getting high, you failed your job. So I am going to start paying you because I want you to understand that this is a job." And of course he doesn't take it seriously because he's like, "Can I get a raise?"
And we also have in that moment where like Mo finally like comes clean to Zeke, he also like just comes out with the line like, "I don't want to become you." And like there's that, wow, is that so bad? And like, yeah, it is. I'm like, oh, all right. Like,
and
instead of Zeke like flipping out about this, like you just see him like sitting with it, like trying to process like, shit. Like this kid that was like been like one of my best friends for so long, like he's like really kind of shitting all over me right now, but like maybe I deserve it. I don't know.
Right. Maybe, right. And one of the lines that John Cryer says earlier that I had to laugh about, and also because at the very end, it's also something that's referenced, and it gives Mo closure towards the end. And I love this, and it leads into the big last scene, is earlier in the film, he talks about like, I want to be a talk show host like Jimmy Kimmel. And he was like, and Mo's like, "Zeke, you should totally start a podcast." And he was like, "You're right. Like, I totally should." And like later in the movie, Mo says to his dad, like, "Yeah, but like, no, Zeke's really cool. Like, he's going to start a podcast." And his dad is like, "No, he's not. Because if he was, he would have already started it." And that's like that moment of like, he's like, he's just talk. Like, he's not going to be anything more than he is right now. Like, people who do things, they just do it. They don't say they're going to do it. They just do it. And it's that moment. And we get that moment later in the movie. And we're going to talk about that in a minute or two. That's like, it's that final last bit of like, you're right. Like, this isn't anything.
Yeah.
So we're at the big party.
Yeah. And as we've seen, from the opening scene, like the cops do like catch on. They figure out who's selling the drugs, and so like they show up to this party, which coincidentally is themed cops and robbers and hoes, I think.
Yeah,
and they bust it up, and it's great because you see a moment where someone looks like, "Who invited their dad?" And,
right.
and the officers are like, like, "Where's it? Like, we need to know where Monroe Harris is. We're the police." And we're like, "Yeah, we are." And everyone's like doing shots and shit, like not getting like shit. This is the actual cops. And so like, Monroe, who has like totally fucked up with Sophie, is like trying his best to like get, win her back. He's like, brought her upstairs into one of the rooms to talk quietly. And like, he thinks that like, he's just going to apologize and it's going to be right. But she's like, "No, you're a dick. And like, I liked you, but I don't anymore. And like, just leave me alone." And like, that's when the cops like catch up to him. So he pulls the epic move of like climbing out the window and jumping into the pool. Zeke pulls him out, and like, there's this amazing slow motion scene where Zeke throws him over his shoulder, and they're like running from the cops together. And like, that's what leads to this like heart to heart moment. Like after this like big, like, kind of crescendo at the party. They're back at Zeke's house. He's changed into like Zeke's old like sweatshirts and stuff like that. So like he's even got the look now, and it's like I feel like that was very like visually intentional to make him like look like Zeke. And like, so they have this whole moment, and the next day like he has the opportunity when the cops ask him like where the drugs are coming from, like he could then in turn rat out Zeke and like pass the blame along and maybe get in less trouble, but he doesn't. He like stops that cycle and takes the responsibility for himself. And he gets like community service and has to be drug tested and stuff like that. Has to go to.
He gets expelled.
Which honestly is just a bullshit punishment, because like nothing says like helping young kids reform and not get into a life of crime like taking them out of the education system. But that's another conversation entirely.
Right. That's Syracuse for you.
Let's instead go send him to clean up Onondaga Lake Park, which again is a necessary thing, but like, maybe don't take him out of school to do that. Right. So, he lives with these consequences and he moves on. And I think it's a really interesting, because this is not a story with a happy ending. This is not a story where like everything comes to a close and you feel good about it. It's a very like real life type story of like the events and the consequences, with the exception of the way that most parents behave, which I guess maybe is real life in some communities, but once again, not where we grew up.
Yeah.
It feels very realistic how this stuff goes down.
Oh yeah. So the very last scene of the movie, we get Mo heads off to just go through the drive-thru, and as he goes through the drive-thru, he gets to get a hot dog, and there is Zeke, who is the drive-thru attendant, and he was like, "Oh shit!" So he comes in and he sits down with Zeke, and it's Mo and Zeke, and he's explained to him all the shit that happened. They haven't spoken in weeks, so it's been a couple of weeks or months. I mean, it's been a while. We know that it's been at least 2 weeks, but I would say definitely more. That they've spoken with each other, and he's Mo's explaining all the shit that he has to do, and and all that, and Zeke was like, "Oh man," and he was like, "Well, how have you been?" And Zeke makes the line. He says, "Oh, I wrote a screenplay," and he was like, "That's awesome." He's like, I would love to read it sometime," and he was like, "Well, I haven't written it yet. It's all in my head," and that's that callback from earlier of like. Yep. He hasn't changed. Like, yeah, he got a job because he had to, but like he hasn't actually changed. In the very last scene of the movie, I fucking love it. So Zeke walks Mo out of the place. He's like, I'll walk you outside really quick. So he walks him outside after he says like, we should hang out. And he was like, yeah, maybe. Mo, you can tell Mo is like, no, man, like I'm done. So the scene, the way it's framed is we're looking at Mo get into his car. So we're looking in through the front of the windshield, and in the back, we see Zeke kind of blurred off in the distance, and Mo gets in his car. He looks at his phone just really quickly, sets it down, and he looks up, and he starts the car, and he drives away, and at no moment does he look at all back to look at Zeke. He doesn't look in the mirror. He doesn't turn his head, nothing. And it's that visual representation. You see Mo has made the decision, the conscious decision to be like, I'm 100%, like he cut right there. And that is just, that last scene just hit. Like that was so perfect, like brilliant.
Which in hindsight, I can very much appreciate with you. In the moment, all I could think about was, since I knew the layout of that parking lot, like homeboy is driving straight at that Party City.
He's driving right at a building. Yeah. It's very funny. It is very true. That's what I thought too. I was like, oh wait, he's driving right towards the media.
Because like while they were in there, like the drive-through scene was very obviously like kind of like small business cobbled together. It's not like this big fast food chain. And then like they're inside. I'm like, this looks super familiar. Like this has to be that Hoffman house that I know is in that parking lot where they keep filming. And I had forgotten that Salt City Dogs was open there. So it was cool to see that that's what that was. But then like as they're driving away, I'm like, is it really? Because there's like, they'd frame it really well with that one little patch of green next to the drive-through. So I'm like, is this what I think it is? But then you see the highway overpasses in the background. I'm like, yep, that's definitely
that's where it is.
Yep. So cool.
So fantastic movie. Highly recommend. So if you would like to watch this, it's available on Hulu right now. So it was going to do a theater run starting on March 13th. It did have a small theater run. It might still be in theaters now. Not really sure how long that's going to last. But it ended up being released a week early on Hulu because of everything that's going on. A lot of companies are releasing their digital stuff a little early just to get it out there, just for people to enjoy while they're in quarantine.
Yeah, while you're socially distancing and
yes,
self-isolating.
Doing the appropriate thing.
Yes.
The responsible thing.
While we're flattening the curves, motherfuckers.
That's right, bitches. But yeah, so Big Time Adolescence streaming, available on Hulu, and highly recommend, obviously. And I say this not only as someone who benefits from you watching it, but as it is actually a really good movie. It is a really good movie.
as someone who doesn't directly benefit, I will agree it was a very good movie. In fact, like I actually went into it a little bit skeptical, like I said, from not really thinking Pete Davidson was that funny from the stand-up show, and even like his SNL stuff kind of iffy, but like the writing in this movie was so good, and like his delivery is like 100% spot on for the lines just hit every time. So turned me around completely.
Kudos to him. Yeah, and so this film debuted at Sundance a year ago, and that was the deal that we ended up landing a really big deal with Hulu, where they were like, we're going to buy this movie, and then you can make a whole bunch of other original movies for us. And speaking of which, one of the original movies is The Binge, starring Vince Vaughn. That one is coming out on Hulu later this year, and we're going to have the writer of that movie, Jordan Van Dyne, on the podcast in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, so Jordan Van Dyne is going to come on, and he's going to talk. He probably won't talk so much about The Binge because he can't really talk about a lot of stuff, but he's going to talk about his project with Weekend Scripts and his upcoming project on Netflix called Cocaine Hippos, which is still with the Pablo Escobar thing. It's going to be pretty funny.
Every time you say that, it just makes me laugh because I just think of hippos just fucking coked out of their minds.
Just fucking coked out. This is great. But aside from that, if somebody wanted to find us, how would they do that right now?
Well, right now you can visit the nohoit.com. That's THENHOIT.com. And on that, as always, we're still maintaining a monthly schedule of what our upcoming episodes are. Links to where you can view trailers, as well as a little information on where you can find these movies streaming should you choose. And again, now is the perfect time to catch up on some really great movies. As we've talked about in the past, we have a completely unpaid relationship with Tubi, in which we watch a lot of their movies and talk about them, and they provide us no direct compensation whatsoever. But that said, you can find a lot of these movies that we watch streaming for free on Tubi. So check that out. On our site, you can also reach out and touch someone virtually, though, because right now is not a good time to be touching people because of spreading virus. But you can contact us to let us know how you feel about the podcast. If you love it, if you hate it, if you have a movie that you want us to review, please do. And of course, you can always leave us reviews and ratings on various podcast services to help other people find out about us. But Michael, where else can they find us if they so choose?
Hey, we are also available on Instagram and Twitter at The Nahoit Podcast. That's the NHOIT Podcast. Both Instagram and Twitter, we post things of like, hey, what's coming up? We'll post trailers as well as little clips from the current week's episode. So definitely follow us on there. That's another place you can tweet at us, comment on one of our Instagram videos or something, and just say like, hey, I love this episode. This was great. Or hey, this episode sucks. You guys are trash. Stop doing this. And we won't, but we'll still listen to your comment. Maybe even read it on a future episode.
We will respectfully disagree.
Sir, I've been doing this for 2 years. Don't plan to stop now. But yeah, so do give us a follow and let us know what you think. And so thanks a lot for joining us, guys. And we will see you next week with Liza and the Fox Fairy.
Yeah, so thanks again for listening to the Never Heard of It podcast, a Night Shift radio production, and that is us.